North Korea, a country famous for its strict control and boundless brutality towards its people. From Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il to the time of Kim Jong-un, 3 generations of the Kim family have built steel walls with fences, guards with orders to shoot as soon as they detect any people daring to cross the border to escape the country. However, every year there are still hundreds of people who dare to risk their lives, crossing glaciers and dense forests, with only one desire: freedom. The North Koreans' escape route is a death journey, where death is always imminent. Many people choose to cross the border with Russia, China, or South Korea, but all are deadly routes, with almost 0 success rates. One of the toughest challenges is the demilitarized zone between South Korea and North Korea, which is considered one of the most dangerous borders in the world. Although this area is called demilitarized, in reality it is tightly guarded, with guards always ready with guns in hand. Ochon Seong was one of the lucky people who made it through this area. On a quiet Monday afternoon in 2017, the tense atmosphere of the demilitarized zone was suddenly disturbed when a man ventured across the border. He drove a high-speed military vehicle towards the border. Dramatic chase images were recorded by Korean military surveillance cameras. When the car could no longer continue, he abandoned the vehicle and ran on foot. North Korean soldiers chased and fired continuously at the British, but despite being hit by several bullets, Ochon Seong still managed to cross the demarcation line. He collapsed behind a wall on the Korean side. A few hours later, South Korean soldiers found him almost dead from excessive blood loss. Crossing the demilitarized zone is extremely rare because the chance of survival is almost non-existent. But the road to Korea is not the only way. There is another extremely dangerous way to escape, which is to cross the Southeast Sea. Along the southeast coast, a North Korean man in his 20s stepped into the water one dark night. He carried a diving suit and flippers and slowly dived down. Diving under the cold water for more than 6 hours, he covered more than 3 kilometers, finally setting foot on the Korean coast near the town of Go-song. Although surveillance cameras along the coast recorded his image, the South Korean military only discovered him while resting under a tree due to exhaustion. This man was a North Korean fisherman seeking asylum. He was lucky because the tide helped him easily overcome this dangerous situation. Perhaps he was very familiar with the currents of the sea, otherwise he might have been swept away and left in the deep ocean. This sea crossing is really only for those who are brave and have a deep understanding of the sea, and only a few lucky people like him can succeed, because most who choose this path never live to tell their story. Escaping to Russia is also extremely rare and equally dangerous. The border between these 2 countries is tightly guarded, with rivers that are deep and difficult to cross. Those who are publicly known to have succeeded in crossing the border into Russia are often individuals of status or power, thanks to the connections they have. In addition to the above methods, the most potential route for North Korean defectors is through China. Between these 2 countries are 2 large rivers, the Ap-Luk and Do-mon. Some sections of the river are only waist deep, and in winter the water freezes, providing a rare opportunity for those who venture across. However, crossing the river is only the first step. The real danger lies in China, where defectors face immediate arrest and deportation. Noodle grew up in an ordinary family. Her house was located right on the bank of the Ap-Luk River. From her backyard, she can see villages across the Chinese border. Her family lived quite comfortably and did not have to worry about hunger. Her father was a street vendor who often traveled back and forth to China for business, while her mother worked for the government. In her free time, her mother also smuggled goods from China, a job not uncommon for North Korean families living near the border. The suffering of poor life has caused many people to find ways to earn extra income to survive. However, her life did not change completely when she was 14 years old. In 1994, when she returned home after school, she found her father had disappeared. He was arrested on his way back from China, accused of corruption and accepting bribes. Her family suspects he was brutally tortured during interrogation. A few months later, there was news that he passed away in the hospital. Minong, her mother and younger brother, must face extreme pain and loss. In sadness and disappointment, Minong began to realize the conflicts she had witnessed since she was a child. The pain of famine, the lies of state propaganda, and the cruel reality of life in poverty gradually appeared clearly before her eyes, making it impossible for her to continue living in the darkness of deception. When Minong was 17 years old, she decided to change her life forever. In just a moment, she crossed the riverbank, her heart pounding. Her plan is to visit relatives in the north, a decision that brings hope, but is also full of risk. She went to a smuggler, living near the river, whom she had trusted through transactions with her mother. He agreed to help her enter the vast city of Shenyang, and that was the first time Minong felt a completely different world than the one she had just left. The bright lights of the streetlights, the crowded streets, and the countless stores filled with food made her dizzy. Everything was so strange and new to her. As time passed and Minong turned 18, she began to think about her family, about returning to North Korea because she missed her mother and younger brother. But then, an unexpected call from her mother made her change her mind. Rumors of her disappearance spread throughout town, with people suspecting she had run away. Returning now could be a dangerous decision. Her family fears retaliation for letting her escape. Her mother advised her to stay in China and live freely because going back would not only risk her life, but also that of her family. Minong had no other choice but to stay in Shenyang. She started working in a restaurant and was determined to learn Chinese. Although missing her family always lingers in her heart, she knows that this is the only way to survive and be free. Noodle always lives in fear. Every second, every minute is afraid of being discovered. She had to change her name many times, a way to protect herself from being hunted. But then one day, it all collapsed. Two men entered the restaurant, asked to see her, and showed their police cards. Her heart stopped beating in that moment. She thought everything was over. She will definitely be arrested and deported back to North Korea. At the police station, questions continuously stabbed at her mind. She was interrogated relentlessly, and they asked her to take a written test in Chinese to prove her language ability. Her hands rose, each letter fumbled, panic filled her body. But fortunately, she overcame it. Then she discovered a painful truth. It was the person she once trusted who reported her to the authorities. That pain made the wound in her heart even worse. In 2002, she boarded a train to Shanghai to start a new life, a path she didn't know if there was a way out or not. In Shanghai, she meets a broker who helps her restart her life with a new identity. She spent all her savings to buy fake documents. With those documents, she found a job as a translator at a Korean company. Life gradually stabilizes, but anxiety is still constant. And then she met and fell in love with a Korean man, and they both planned for her to seek asylum in Seoul. After many years of waiting, she finally boarded the plane and almost touched freedom. But then once again, the specter of being deported to North Korea came. She was suspected of being a spy. Immigration officers interrogated her for a week straight. Each question was like hammer blows that shattered her fragile hope. But finally, after those dark days, she received a permanent residence permit. She did it. She was free. Many years later, Minyoung has now changed her name to Lee Hun-seo. Not only did he find freedom for himself, but he also spent most of his life helping other minors. She spoke out to fight for the freedom of people still imprisoned under harsh regimes. Her journey lasted more than a decade, filled with suffering and loss. But those efforts have brought about a life without So-He's shadow. But her story is just one of countless fierce digs. For many North Koreans, China is just the first stop on the journey to freedom. Places like Vietnam, Thailand, or Mongolia are final destinations, providing refuge and a route to seek asylum in South Korea. Like Seon, a woman living in poverty, making a living as a street vendor in North Korea's black markets. She used to believe in the promises of the supreme leader and the government, promises of a better life, but it's all just illusions. One day, a friend told her about a Chinese broker who could help her cross the border for a small fee. Seon thought this was his last chance. After weeks of preparation, Seon and his friend waited by the riverbank one summer night. The moonlight was dim, and there was only faint light from the villages across the river. When they crossed the cold water, without border guards. She guessed that the broker had bribed them. But things didn't turn out as smoothly as she expected. When she reached the Chinese shore, the broker told her to go ahead alone. Her friend will follow in another car to ensure safety. She reluctantly complied, hugged her friend, said goodbye, but did not know that this would be the last goodbye to her friend. The car took her to a remote village, and when the driver announced that she would meet her new husband, she panicked. She thought it was just a joke, but the truth was extremely cruel. Se-yoon was tricked into being sold to a middle-aged farmer. In the midst of their journey across the border, countless North Koreans fell into the hands of human traffickers who took advantage of the needy for profit. And for Se-yoon, this journey became a never-ending nightmare. After 2 years of living in isolation and abuse, she seemed to have no hope left. However, Se-yoon still secretly learned Chinese, saved money by selling eggs, and always silently calculated an escape plan. One night, when the opportunity came, she decided to take action. With her hidden savings and a few simple items, she escaped. She had no plan, no direction, and no one to help her. She just ran straight ahead. After months on the run, she came across a network of train diggers in Beijing's Koreatown. They promised to help her get to Mongolia. She knew that if she returned to North Korea, she would become a traitor to the leader and the country. That would mean torture and death for her and her family. She cannot go back. She decided to go to Mongolia. That faraway land seemed to be Se-yoon's only chance to find freedom, so she decided to leave. However, the only road leading to that place is blocked by the Gobi Desert. With an area as large as Peru, this place is extremely harsh, with cold nights, scorching days, and not a drop of water. And Se-yoon joined the group of ship diggers and began the difficult and arduous journey. As long days followed nights, they walked through sandstorms, sharing sips of water and meager morsels of food. After many days of nonstop walking, her feet bled, her body was exhausted, she lacked water, and she was hungry, but Se-yoon had only one thought left in her mind: freedom. Finally, as they neared the Mongolian border, the group discovered there were border guards. One person in the group voluntarily approached and offered a bribe. If things don't go well, at least the remaining people can escape without being detected. Se-yoon watched nervously as the person chatted with the border guards. Luckily, they were Mongol soldiers and very friendly. They guided the group into the refugee camp. After several months in the refugee camp, Se-yoon was finally granted permission to move to South Korea. She is one of the few North Koreans who succeeds each year. There are so many others, like her, who have endured so much suffering, risked their lives to cross borders and walk through deadly roads, but never get to tell their stories. North Korean people, living under the rule of a brutal regime, always face hardship, not only by the cruelty of the government, but also by human traffickers and the dangers of risky trips. How do you feel about the fate of people in North Korea? Is there any light for them? How to be free? Please share your views below so we can discuss. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.